You are.
Yes, sir. Hey, Rabbi. How are you?
How are you?
Good.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Kevin.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Kevin.
It's late morning and it's this quiet. Wow.
It'll be different when we let the congregants back in. There's no whispering in the pews anymore. Nobody checking their cell phones. They've been so well behaved during this entire pandemic. It's really quite remarkable.
We were still waiting on a few folks to get on here.
This is a first in Jewish history. The rabbi is one of the first people in the meeting.
Well, you're representing well, Rabbi David. Shalom.
You're very kind, Reverend. So are you. I like the tie. It's very nice.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I appreciate your Mother's Day homily.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to give you credit for it the first time. After that, it's a wrap.
I like your approach to footnoting. Very nice.
Well, you know, I am Baptist. We have the tendency of highlighting some other sermons and giving credit first time, then we kind of rearrange it. And second time around, we'll give you a shout out.
Very good. How was your Mother's Day weekend?
Yeah, it was great. I had a chance to go to Louisville to in actuality visit my mother's grave site. She's buried in Louisville, so I went there and put some flowers and a few things down and had a great time. One of my children, my daughter, came and we just kind of hung out, you know, and a lot of cars and a lot of
How many
visitors
years?
were there visiting. Mother passed in 16. And
Oh, much too
had a
young. I'm
stroke.
so sorry.
Yeah. Well, you know, one writer has stated there's no earthly friend like mother. And that is
Indeed
so true.
not. No.
Actuality, I was born on her birthday.
Oh, that's interesting. I've taken the task. It used to belong to a member of the congregation, but for the last year, I make phone calls on congregants' birthdays, and there's a number of women whose birthdays aligned with Mother's Day this year, or the Mother's Day weekend, and it's very sweet.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes,
Well,
sir.
Pastor
Well,
Tyler,
Quinn,
we're a few minutes in here. I'm not seeing anybody else join, but do we want to go ahead and get started and start talking about?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm pretty sure that many of them had probably tried to get in early like me, and they're probably redialing and triple dialing and all the rest of the dialing. So we'll go ahead and get started. I have an agenda here that was submitted to me, and I believe it's proper and in order. Call to order. Secondly, discussion of reopening benchmarks and guidelines, yours truly. Discussion of final recommendations, yours truly. Then the adjournment. We want to be mindful that we've been asked to cover a particular, I guess you would say, several areas as it relates to the COVID-19 response. And we want to thank the mayor and her staff for pulling together a collective audience of representation throughout the Commonwealth, especially here in Lexington and Fayette County, deemed as the horse capital of the world. Secondly, we want to say to all of the committee persons, thank you for what you've done, and to Quinn, Melissa, and all the rest, and for all of the emails. I think we've had like, a good 20 or 30 emails. And so thank you for keeping us up to date. Here is
Pastor
some
Tyler,
highlights as we.
I'm sorry, I've got to interrupt. We've got to. I just got to read a quick statement here at the beginning of the meeting before we go any further, just to keep us in compliance with open meetings law. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, state of emergency, and Governor Beshear's executive orders regarding social distancing, this meeting is being held via teleconference pursuant to Senate Bill 150, as signed by the governor on March 30th, 2020, and Attorney General Opinion 20-05, and in accordance with KRS 61.826, because it is not feasible to offer a primary physical location for the meeting. Sorry again for interrupting.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We appreciate you staying on top of a few things, and we do realize the urgency and also the responsibility and commitment level from the governor's office as it begins to funnel through all the way here in Lexington. And we want to commend the governor, as a matter of fact, and his staff for a job well done thus far. Now, back to some of the benchmarks, if you would. There were three things that we were asked to consider and to give as a report back to the mayor. One is, what are your plans for reopening, and what are the benchmarks and guidelines that are needed to reopen? Two, what do businesses and organizations in your sector need to reopen safely under the governor's 10 rules to reopen? And what is your scale back operations while safely maintaining operations in the event we face a second wave of COVID-19? And so these are the three areas of discussion that we want to kind of center around as the faith-based committee, a small representation of a larger portion, if you would, of the community. So let me open up, and I will entertain the committee that is present to get a response. Rabbi, we'll start with you.
Can you put a draft or other language to those questions up on shared screen, or were these in the documents that Melissa sent out to the group earlier?
These were sent out in actuality on May the 5th. I'm not for sure. This came from Quentin Welch. Maybe he can post it. I'm not for sure. Quinn, is that something you can do, Quinn?
Yeah, so we're actually not legally allowed to do a share screen, just because everybody's got to be able to be viewed for the open meetings law requirements. Melissa, do you have? I believe we've got a document that was sent around having to do, especially with Pastor Aiken's proposed benchmarks and guidelines. Do you mind just to forward that out?
I've seen CB's 23 points. I'm just not prepared. Perhaps I'm misunderstanding the Reverend's question. I'm not prepared to answer his question as I understand it. Could you pose the question again, please? Maybe you're asking maybe I'm misunderstanding you and you're asking a more detailed question.
That's no problem. That's no problem. That's no problem. Let's do it like this. Let me go old school. As a faith-based community, what is, or better yet, what are your plans for reopening as a faith-based leader?
Our plans for reopening are consistent with CB's 23 points.
Okay, all right.
That's the most specific answer I can give you right now. And as I said in my Mother's Day message, while we're grateful for the choice to reopen on the 20th or first Sabbath thereafter, our congregation is not prepared to have any kind of reopen until there's far more information and resources available. And I'll say that Jewishly speaking, for our particular community, we are considering the ramifications of this for the Jewish high holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur that will take place in September.
Rabbi and Pastor, if I may, I think it might be useful if it's agreeable to the committee, if we could agree. I think based off of our meeting last week and what I'm hearing so far during this meeting, I think it might be useful to go ahead and if everybody's agreeable to the 23 points that Pastor Aikens sent out, I think it might be useful to go ahead and state that we'll use those in the report, with the caveat that many of the places of worship represented on this committee do not plan to open on the first day that the governor has made available for places of worship to reopen, but that these are guidelines that we can submit to the governor for churches to use best practices as these churches start to reopen. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but I would like to also, Quinn, mention to you that there's another sector of clergy in the community. I would say at least another 80% of the clergy that we have yet to hear from. These can be recommendations made from the core group that is present, but there are others I will be meeting with, and I am meeting with, as a matter of fact, that represents a multiplicity of other faiths. As you well know, there are 180 different languages now in Lexington. When I came here 20 years ago, there were not. And so we can use this as a buffer or as a draft and draw from there. That's fine with me. Some of the recommendations would be rotational services that would occur within the faith-based community. For an example, here at the Antioch Church, we're looking at having 2 worship services on Wednesdays and 2 worship services on Sundays. And these worship services are going to be geared toward a rotational group of different sectors. Seniors on one particular worship service, youth on another, married couples on another, and then the congregation at large. Secondly, there's a concern, Quinn, as it relates to, and Rabbi, as it relates to health resources on Sunday. In the state of emergency, if there's a need, is the faith-based community asked to continue contacting or traveling to the ER or calling the EMS. We had asked about that. Third is a relationship to resources for those faith-based congregations that may need assistant resources, whether that be hand sanitizer, mask, et cetera, and et cetera. And last but not least, well, two more things. Last but not least is leadership training for the faith-based community, for those within each church. For an example, here at the Antioch Church, we're going to have 5 designated leaders that will go through a training phase. Matter of fact, some of them are now. In relationship to that training phase, as far as some of the recommendations that CB did mention, which I am in full support of, by the way, we're going to train them. Some of them just don't know this is the first time that they've had to deal with it. And last but not least is the sanitation of the building itself, from top to bottom. There are those who are leery, even for those who come in just to check the mail. Has doorknobs been wiped down, banisters, taken all of the books, and I think CB had mentioned that. I think the rabbi had a question about hymn books and other books that are used for liturgies. If I'm correct, Rabbi, you had mentioned something about that.
That's correct.
Okay, so there's still and not negating the essence of the hour or the urgency of the hour, but we want to be mindful that this is a first timer, and we don't want to lock ourselves in, or better yet, saying these are the recommendations and that's it. And I'm not saying that's what we are suggesting here, but we do have some other strongly interested parties that represent 90% of the faith-based community, and we have yet to bring those to the table. And so I wanted to kind of just highlight that to share with us. Are there any questions about that? Okay, great. Now let me kind of shift here and move forward. We kind of discussed some of the benchmarks, the recommendations, and again, we are full support as it relates to Dr. Akins with a collective voice of other ministers. We were on a call the other day, as a matter of fact, and shared some of those, and we added some more to it. There's a moderator in our area, Nathan Moore. He has 16 recommendations. So, and then of course we had the 48 questions before reopening your church. Melissa, I believe you sent that out to us, and I want to thank you for that. From Mr. Ken Brady at Lifeway. And these 48 questions, I would also ask to be a part of the consideration as it relates to the faith-based community. They are excellent questions. I mean, simply excellent. A lot of research has been done in relationship to the reopening of the churches. What I'm hearing, ladies and gentlemen, and then we can kind of open it up for further discussion. But what I'm hearing in the community is many are not planning to reopen. One pastor stated that he does not plan to reopen until August of next year. August of next year. And some are even suggesting that we wait until the second wave of COVID-19 before reopening. And thirdly, we have, Melissa and Quinn, we have a senior citizen challenge. Some of the seniors are afraid to come out of the house. Do we go door to door to minister? Do we drop off DVDs? How do we do that? So there is a concern for the seniors within the faith-based community. And so we'll have to tweak as we go along. We'll have to adjust accordingly. And so these are some other concerns that come to our attention. I'll give you another example, Rabbi. We had a gentleman that wanted to join our church. As a matter of fact, I have 3 people that have asked to unite with the faith. How do we do that? What steps do we take? So what I've done, after we have our morning online broadcasting, we dismiss the core group that's here, people that are here to handle the finances and some other administrative duties. And then we bring the person in alone. That's how we've been ministering. So there are those who are asking, how do I minister to someone who actually wants to come into the faith versus just hearing the sermon and the message over the line. So that's another key component that many have inquired. So that's kind of a roundabout way that I kind of want to bring it back around the corner to see if there are any other discussions or concerns as it relates to the faith-based committee in response to the economic COVID-19. And then I have a few other things, and then I'm done unless someone else has something they need to share. Okay. Rabbi, do you have anything else you want to add?
In the spirit of Judaism, I only have questions to add. In the most trying pastoral case of how we handle end of life, it would be particularly good. At one point, I believe Lexington Cemetery was saying no more than 10 people socially distant at grave's side. Will the mayor's office and will the governor's administration continue to update us with appropriate social distancing for end of life, including burial, memorials, etc.? Right now, most of my colleagues are handling everything by Zoom. The conservative congregation, I'm Reform ordained and lead Temple Adat Israel. The conservative congregation has had to handle a couple of funerals during this time. Blessedly, we have not. Is there going to be an update, particularly with the physical expectations with regard to burial and the logistics of that from the mayor's office or from the governor's administration, now that we're beginning a soft reopen?
Rabbi, we're trying to do our best at once the governor gives us that further guidance, making sure that we try to push it out as well. So the answer to your question is yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Excellent question. Rabbi, you didn't mention about marriages. How do we handle marriages? Just let maybe the bride and the groom and the witnesses assemble with the mask on and we go to the house.
Right. Of course, the major point of contrast is that of time, that we can control the time of our wedding. We don't control the time of our funeral, even if our critics wished it were otherwise. I have a couple of June weddings. I need to check in with these folks, but I would imagine if your folks are anything like mine, that the social part of the wedding is as important to them, if not more so, than the religious component. And nobody wants to celebrate their wedding date under these circumstances. I have a nephew who was going to get married next month in California. He and his fiance have postponed the ceremony for at least a year. I have to check in with some folks about their wedding dates. My guess is that they simply want to postpone. They might get a civil license if the tax benefits, civic benefits of marriage are that important to them. The same holds true for us, for bar and bat mitzvah, when a young man or a young woman turns 13. Because the Jewish literature is not strict on any time after the 13th birthday. They're not supposed to do it before. But since there's nothing demanding that reading from scripture being called to the Torah happen on the 13th birthday proper, again, our young people that are in the process to have their ceremonies in October, I imagine these families are going to want to delay. People want to bring in folks from all over the country, sometimes all over the world to celebrate. And they're simply not going to want to do it under these circumstances.
Okay. All right. Let me kind of shift here. I see Quinn So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people on the committee, and only 2 are present. We have heard from CB. However, I'm just a little curious. Did any of the other committee persons ever respond or send any emails or anything of that nature as it relates to the faith-based subcommittee?
Melissa?
Did they respond to give us information or to say they would be at the meeting?
Both.
So for the meeting response, I did have several people respond that they were coming. I'm trying to pull it up here really quick. That are not here. Pastor Gaines accepted, and CB Aikens accepted. And then we have had a couple of things that were shared with us, but I did share those with the group when I sent out the minutes as well. So everyone has a copy of what we have.
Sure, not slighting anyone, but we see the other Emmanuel and Southland as well. And so there was no response. Okay, no recommendations. Okay, all right. Well, I tell you what, here's what I would suggest, and we could all chime in and kind of conclude with this particular meeting. I don't believe in trying to stretch an hour if you don't need to. I would suggest, Quinn, we have one last. Will you say we have May? I'm looking at May the 18th as an email that was sent. Is that correct? Or the final recommendation? Is that correct?
So, Pastor Tyler, the guidance that the mayor has given up to this point is that each subcommittee is to have their final report to the mayor's office, and that includes me or Melissa by noon on Friday, the 15th. The meeting,
Okay.
the meeting on
the 18th, right?
No, the meeting on the 18th is with the mayor and all the subcommittee chairs, but each subcommittee is to conclude their work by Friday the 15th.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, that'll give us a little bit more time. I want to gather some more information to add with what we have. And then from there we can go. I'm just a little cautious right now with just putting forth one set of recommendations. It's not that they're bad, but there are others who have asked to share as well. And I have mentioned this, as a matter of fact, to others who are part of this collective audience of committee personalities. And we've been assured that there will be a follow-up with a larger group to chime in as well. So I just want to highlight that. I'll get that to you. You said Friday by noon. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. And really anything that we've discussed in the subcommittee that you'd like to be included in that final report needs to be in that document for Friday.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll
Okay,
the one thing I want to stress as well is that the document you'll see come out on Monday that'll include all of the subcommittee's final reports. What we're going to do is we're going to try and merge everything into one format, one standard format for each of the subcommittees, just so it's easy to read, easy to understand. So what will be submitted, what you'll submit to us on Friday may look a little different, but the content will be the same. So.
Okay. Well, let me answer this, Quinn.
Reverend?
The chair, will the chair or the subcommittee persons be privy to see that before it's publicized?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay.
Reverend, if I may,
Yes,
two things. The first is I want to second, I don't know if you would use the word concern, but your point that, while the mayor's office and others are to be commended for their outreach and efforts, to get a broad group defined. And I would agree with you. I don't wish to, cast criticism or certainly, aspersions on anyone. We're all very busy. But I think it's only appropriate that we recognize in this report that we don't necessarily have universal buy-in of our colleagues. I think it would be a mistake to provide more reassurance to the public that we're all rowing the same direction if we don't know that. So
Rabbi, if I may, this report is not meant to be a public. It'll be because it'll be submitted to the governor. It may be viewable to the public, but these are recommendations for the governor. So I just want to point that out that
thank you.
This won't be a guide document for the public. Rather, will be recommendations as we move forward and the governor continues to make recommendations.
All right, as long as it's framed in that spirit, thank you. I also want to acknowledge in front of the entire group with great thanks to Quinn and to Kevin, who addressed my questions with regard to the undocumented and the underdocumented that was raised at the last meeting, and thank both gentlemen for being so generous with their time. Obviously, it's a huge question that has ramifications well beyond House of Worship reopening. And I thank the gentleman for taking the time to address my question offline. And we're putting together a team to talk about the implications of this for the undocumented. I just want to recognize that I've been heard and taken seriously, and that I don't take that for granted. So thank you to the group for that very much.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let me see here. Bob and Kevin, is there anything that you guys want to share before we kind of wrap up? Or any questions you may have?
I don't have anything else.
Just a lot of gratitude for all the work that several of you did, and in particular that the two of you have done today, and also to the staff. This has been it's interesting. I've been able to participate in 9 different sessions, and there's a lot of similarity to the types of questions that come out and to how the report will be used. And so this has been a great learning experience for me. It's really broadened my whole understanding of the community, and then how proud I am to live in this community because of people like all of you that have given a lot of your time, energy, and your thought about how to make sure it's very encompassing of the community. Trust me, this doesn't happen in a lot of communities. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kevin and Bob. We appreciate your support. And also want to say that this has been a learning curve for me. In the faith-based world, geometry has been deemed as a short distance with a straight line between two distances, but in the faith-based community, God has a different type of geometry, and he doesn't always move in a straight line, and we see through a glass darkly. And so that's why I'm kind of pumping the brakes on some things, because we are still gauging ourselves accordingly. And we also, not being judgmental, realize there are those who are not of the faith-based community as well, but they are people, and we're concerned about all people. And so with that being said, I'm going to wrap up, Quinn, and if there's nothing else for discussion, we'll get those other concerns and questions to you. If I'm understanding, you want that sent to you or Melissa or both?
You can send it to both me and Melissa.
All right, good deal.
And
Okay,
then, Pastor, just one quick thing. Did you want to have a final meeting before we do this, or not? Because if so, we probably ought to go ahead and schedule another meeting right now.
Well, if I'm understanding you, Quinn, it sounds like to me that your schedule is already overloaded, and I don't know if you guys have the time.
Yeah, I think
I don't want to have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. I can have my own meeting with the other group, okay? to get their information and submit it. I don't think it necessitates you being here, and I can speak independently without speaking as a chair for the faith-based committee. That's something we can do independently. So I have about 48, maybe 50 other clergy that represent about another 10 denominations that we work with. And so we want to hear from them. But no, sir, I don't think it warrants. You guys have enough to do. Y'all go ahead and do what you got to do, and we'll make sure their voices are heard. Okay.
That sounds great. Just wanted to make sure I understood and we had everything in order. I appreciate it.
All righty. Well, if nothing else, we'll call for adjournment, and you all have a beautiful day.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you all.
Okay.